Hi, welcome back to Sophie's Books, or welcome if you're new here. Today's video is going to be part 2 of my autumn reading guide. So part 1 was focused on cosy books that slowly transition you into the season. But part 2 is one I've been most excited to film, and that's because it is witchy book recommendations. You'll notice that there's quite a lot of gaps on the shelf behind me, and that's because they are all out here for me to show you. So I have a lot to talk to you about, a lot of books on this list. So I have my Sanderson Sisters t-shirt on. I've also got my coffee in my little witch's cauldron. So yeah, I think we're probably good to get started. Let's get going. So over the years I've amassed quite a large collection of witchy books. Some I have still to read, so they won't be in this video, but you will have seen from my September TBR that I've got quite a few witch books in there to read this month. So I'm going to be starting with some mythology retellings which feature witches. I'm going to be moving on to some historical fiction from various periods of time. Some focused on witch trials, and then I've also got some YA books for you, also some romance books, some cozy witchy books, and also quite a lot of adult fiction books, which also includes some series. So we're going to start with mythology. So the first book I have for you is Circe by Madeline Miller, and this is a retelling of Circe's story. So Circe in Greek mythology, she's always seen as this witch who lures Odysseus onto her island and keeps him there and stops him from returning to his wife Penelope. But this, we start with her origin story. Circe is daughter of Helios, who is god of the sun, and she grows up in a family where she's seen as quite strange, and she's not as powerful as her father and not as beautiful as her mother, but she does have a dark power of her own, and that is sorcery and witchcraft. So after using her powers against a mortal, she is exiled to an island to live. She uses her time on the island to hone her craft and become a more powerful witch. Lots of people come to visit her on the island. We see her niece Medea and her husband Jason, and she also gets to temporarily go away from the island to help birth the Minotaur. One day a ship comes to the island with a crew of men, and one of these men chokes and rapes Circe. So to get revenge, she turns the whole crew into pigs. So gradually other ships come to the island and she turns the crews into pigs. One day another ship comes, this time with Odysseus on board, and he has a herb to stop him being bewitched by Circe. So she is intrigued by him and slowly starts to fall in love with him, and we see kind of the aftermath of Odysseus coming. The story, I feel, is really about Circe coming into her own and really discovering her witch powers. And I feel like Circe has for so long just been seen as a temptress, and we haven't really found out a lot more about her backstory. But it just shows how she is persecuted because of being different, because she has powers. But Madeline Miller is really great at giving Circe her own voice, and her writing is beautiful. Okay, so next is kind of related to Circe because it is Medea. By Rosie Hewlett. So Medea is Circe's niece. So this one I read, I think it was either last year or the year before, but I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. It is beautiful. And Rosie has also re-released one of her earlier works of Medusa in a matching edition. So yeah, I'm hoping to read that soon as well. Medea is a retelling of Medea's story. So we learn a bit more about her backstory. Medea is always painted as an evil woman in mythology, admittedly she does do some terrible things. I'm not going to go into all the details just in case you're not so sure on the mythology and you want to find that out for yourself, or you want to read this without knowing much about Medea. So Medea possesses a mysterious, powerful gift, and her father exploits her gift and uses it for his own means, and he's using it to protect the Golden Fleece, which is a magical item which protects the lands. One day, handsome Jason arrives on the island looking to get the Golden Fleece, and he uses Medea to help him locate the fleece and take it with him. So Jason is travelling on the Argo with the Argonauts, and Medea is fascinated by Jason. She offers to help Jason defeat his father, and he accepts and takes Medea with him on the Argo, and she uses her magic a lot to help Jason, and she slowly starts to fall in love with Jason as well, and then their relationship sets in motion a series of events which leads Medea to committing probably one of the worst atrocities that a woman can commit. I really enjoyed this and enjoyed hearing a different perspective on Medea, and one which follows her story a bit more closely rather than just painted through her relationship with Jason. I found the plot was engaging. I loved hearing more about Medea's narrative, and also the writing was just beautiful. I find the character of Medea so interesting, and I really want to read more stories about her. After this one, I also read Atalanta, which is a mythology retelling of Jason and the Argonauts, and that had Medea, but it wasn't told from her perspective. And then also Natalie Haynes' new book, No Friend to This House, is also a retelling of Jason and the Argonauts, and I think focusing a lot on Medea's story, so I'm looking forward to reading that one. Also, I need to pick up the original play of Medea, which was written by Euripides, and I would have loved to see that performed in the West End, but I missed that. So that was my 2 mythology recommendations. Now I'm going to talk about some historical fiction books. So first up is actually a book that was on my September TBR that I've already read, and that is The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook. We follow Alison in 1594, and she has been accused of witchcraft, and she is waiting trial in prison. There is also some family history, and there's this book called The Book of Witching, which is a dark book and has been known to haunt people and also encourage them to do things that are seen as evil. Then we also have Clem in 2024 in Glasgow, and she has been called to the hospital because her daughter has been found in Orkney on a beach with catastrophic burns. One of her friends is missing, and her boyfriend has also been burned alive. So her daughter Erin is under suspicion of perhaps having something to do with her boyfriend being burned and her missing friend. She is in a coma, so can't say much. But when she awakes, she has no memories of what happened, and the only thing she knows is that her name is Nyx, and we will find kind of a connection to this book of witching. We will see how these women are connected over 400 years. So yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. It was a really great mystery, trying to work out what had happened, and I love the switching between the 2 timelines, and Alison's story was really kind of brutal and heart-wrenching, and it shows you potentially how people who were accused of witchcraft were treated and the lengths which the prosecutors would go to make them confess that they were indeed a witch. So yeah, this is a great historical fiction, and also I'd say mystery, and the author slowly gives you more information about what's happened, and she doesn't reveal a lot at once, so you're learning with these characters what has happened. Next up we have The Mercies by Kiran Millwood Hargrave. Now this is set in 1617 on the island of Vardø, and it's a remote Norwegian island, and there is a terrible storm in which all of the men on the island are killed and the women are left to fend for themselves, and they find a new way of life with only women. So Maren watches this storm and she sees Vardø become now an island of women. 18 months after the disaster, a sinister figure, Absalom, arrives on the island with his young wife, and he has come to the island to bring the women into line and get them into order, as they have been living without the rule of men for 18 months. So he brings his young wife Ursa with him. Maren and Ursa slowly become closer. I feel that Kiran Millwood Hargrave is brilliant at writing women's stories. She has written a lot of young adult and children's books, but this one is one of her adult fiction. Her writing is just beautiful, and she really brings life into these characters and this time period, and she gives us insight into what it potentially was like for these women. And there's actually The Witches of Vardø on my September TBR, so I think that will be set in the same kind of time period. I'm very much a lover of all things Scandinavian, so I love this beautiful cover with the artwork and these beautiful sprayed edges. Next we have The Manningtree Witches by A.K.Blakemore, and this is set in 1643 in England. So puritanical fever has gripped the nation, and similarly to the Mercies, we have a community which is depleted of men. This is because of the Civil War. Women are left to their own devices, and we follow Rebecca West, who is getting fed up of the drudgery of her days. She longs to fight against societal norms, and she catches the attention of Matthew Hopkins, who soon arrives into the community, and he is casting accusations. This is again one of those novels that can show us an insight into potentially what it was like in these times for people, and how anyone could be accused of being a witch, and accusations were flying everywhere, and witch finders and witch hunters were brought in to bring out all the witches. And A.K.Blakemore's writing is just beautiful. It is very poetic, so if you're not really a fan of kind of more poetic lyrical writing, then this probably isn't for you, but it was just beautiful. The way she crafts sentences is just gorgeous, and also kind of gives us a fresh perspective on witch trials. So the next novel I have is moving away from the period of the witch trials and is now gone into the 1970s, and this is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. So this, I think, was written based on Grady Hendrix's aunt's experiences. This is following Fern, who is 15 years old and is pregnant, and her parents are sending her to St Augustine, which is a home for wayward girls, those who've got pregnant, and they live in St Augustine House during their pregnancy, and then they give birth and their babies are adopted by couples and they're sent back to get on with the rest of their life. So every day of their lives is controlled by the nurses at St Augustine, but one day Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and suddenly this gives power to the girls, so they start developing magical powers. So this follows three girls who form a bond, while being at this home, and we find a bit more about their own stories and how they came to be here at this home. Yeah, this is a very moving tale of these girls' stories, and you can see how they have no control over their lives. Society's expectations have forced them to be here. Their parents are obviously facing a lot of shame, and I think this was something that probably happened quite a lot and was covered up a lot. So it was really interesting to find out more about something that I wasn't really aware of. And Grady Hendrix is a great writer. He's great at writing horror, good at writing suspense. Yeah, I would definitely recommend picking this up too. So now I'm going to move on to my YA witchy recommendations, and first up I have a duology which is from 2014, so it's quite old now. I picked this up during the whole hype around Twilight and other similar fandoms. And this is the Witchfinder trilogy, and this is by Ruth Warburton. So we have Witchfinder and then we have Witch Hunt. This duology is set in London in 1880, and we follow Luke Lexton, whose parents were killed by witches, and he is seeking to avenge their deaths. So he wants to become a witch hunter, and as part of his initiation process he has to open the Book of Witches and pick a name from this book of a witch who he will hunt down and kill, and this has to be done within the next month or he will face his own death. So by random, Luke picks out Rosa Greenwood, and she is a young witch who is quite difficult to kill. She herself is in a loveless arranged marriage. So we see what happens as Luke hunts Rosa and as the two become part of each other's lives. And yeah, I find Ruth Warburton's writing was really good. I mean, it was a long time since I read this, but I remember it being quite a page turner. The characters felt really real and fleshed out, and I love the idea that rather than focused on the witch herself, we are focused on the witch hunter who is out to kill her, and we also kind of get some understanding of why he wants to kill witches, what he has against witches. So it was quite an interesting perspective. So I definitely recommend picking this up if you are a fan of YA. So yeah, it's the series Witchfinder and Witch Hunt. And I can't go into much detail about what happens in this because otherwise I'll spoil this one. But yeah, that's the duology. So next up I have another book by Ruth Warburton, and for some reason I only have the second book in the trilogy. This is the Winter trilogy. So we start with A Witch in Winter, A Witch in Love, and then A Witch Alone. This trilogy follows Anna, who doesn't know she's a witch, but is very sceptical of those who believe in witches. She moves to a small town called Winter to live with her father, and she meets a boy called Seth, and she ends up accidentally casting a spell to make him love her, and unwittingly starts a conflict between two rival witch clans. Again, I read this one quite a long time ago, so I can't remember everything that happens, but I remember again being compelled by this story. Ruth Warburton is a brilliant YA novelist. I love the characters and the relationship between the characters, and also finding out more about the setting in this town and these rival clans, and we kind of discovering about the world of witches through Anna's eyes as she slowly discovers that she is a witch. I'm not sure what happened to my copies of book 1 and 3, or if I ever had a copy of them. Maybe I got them on Kindle or borrowed them from the library. But yeah, I think the physical copies are quite difficult to get hold of. But I think the two series by Ruth Warburton are highly underrated. These are brilliant, and I haven't really heard many people talk about them. And the fact that they're quite difficult to get hold of just surprised me. So yeah, it's a shame. So next up I have an occult YA, and it does read a little bit more adult, but this is The Invocations by Krystal Sutherland, and she is the author of House of Hollow, which I haven't read, but I would love to pick that up because that sounds great. This follows the story of 3 women who end up brought together by specific events. So this is set in a world where only women have magic, and the men that know about their magic are seeking to eradicate these witches. So there's been 5 murders and no DNA or fingerprints were left behind, so the police are not able to find out who is behind these murders. And we follow Zara, whose sister was one of the first bodies to be found. So she is looking for answers as to what happened to her sister, and she needs a curse writer to help her with this. Then we have Jude, who is very rich, and we discover that she has a curse and she has bound her soul to a demon, and in order to break this curse she is also looking for a curse writer. Then we have Emma, who is a curse writer. So they come together and they attempt to try and find out who is behind these murders, and trying to solve that and see if they can catch who did it. Meanwhile, struggling with their own inner demons, and in Jude's case, the actual demon that she is tethered to. I loved the occult vibe to this, and it was quite dark. So yeah, that's why I say it's a bit more kind of borderline YA adult. But the writing is great, the plot was compelling. I loved all of these different characters and liked seeing the relationship between them all. I would definitely recommend this if you are looking for more of the occulty vibe to your YA. So next up, I have one of my favourite reads of last year, I think. I gave this 5 stars, and this is The Crimson Moth by Kirsten Ciccarelli. And this, I love this edition. This is the Fairy Loot edition. So yeah, I love this artwork and the moth on the side. And yeah, we have some beautiful character art as well. I just thought this was probably one of the best editions that Fairy Loot have done. And then the cover, naked hardback, was just beautiful. But yeah, this is part of a duology. The second book is called The Rebel Witch and is already out, but I haven't read it yet because I'm waiting for the Fairy Loot matching edition, which for some reason needs about a whole year to ship. So I'll be waiting until I receive that before I read the sequel. But I do have a lot of other books to get on with in the meantime anyway, so that's fine. So in the US, this is called, I think, Heartless Hunter. They had different names for the different markets. I don't know why, but I think I do prefer The Crimson Moth. So this story follows Rune, who is a witch and descendant of witches, and she's living in society where she has to hide her magic. By day, she pretends to be nothing more than a socialite, but by night, she is a vigilante called the Crimson Moth, and she is trying to get justice for witches and free any imprisoned witches, and she is specifically looking for a witch called Seraphine to understand a little bit more about her past and the event that happened. I won't give too much away because I don't want to spoil it, but there is quite a key event in the opening few chapters which is quite shocking, but this is what sets Rune on this path. And one night she's attempting a rescue which goes wrong, and she has to do something to throw the witch hunters off her scent. So she attempts to court Gideon, who is a well-respected member of the witch hunters. So apparently this was based on the Scarlet Pimpernel, which I haven't read, I don't know much about. I love how the authors created the world and the magic and the backstory, and there's a lot of mystery going on in here. And I love kind of the double crossing. So Rune is a witch, she's pretending to be a socialite and just courting the witch hunter. Gideon's a witch hunter, he suspects Rune of being a witch, and he's kind of going along with her courting to find out more about her as a witch. So they're both double crossing each other, which I found a really interesting concept. I think this is a really good newer take on witch trials and witch hunters. But yeah, I would highly recommend this. This was, as I said, a 5-star read. The writing is beautiful. I think again this is a little more I guess new adult, more on the borderline between YA and adult. So next is another book that I gave 5 stars to last year, and this is The Bell Witches by Lindsay Kelk. Lindsay Kelk is mainly known for the I Heart series, which I'm not really a big rom-com reader, but I love the I Heart series. That's one of my favourite. This is Lindsay Kelk's first YA book and also her first kind of more supernatural book. I think it's the start of a trilogy. I'm not sure when the second book is out. It's possibly next year. But I loved this so much. I love the setting. It felt a little bit like, kind of, it gave the Beautiful Creatures vibe, if you've seen that. So again, this follows a young girl called Emily who doesn't have any ideas about her magical lineage. Her father tragically dies, so she is then sent to live with the only family she has left, which is her grandmother and her aunt in Savannah in Georgia. And they live in one of those beautiful Georgia houses, but the house has a secret and all is not what it seems to be. And the family, who are the Bell family, they are hiding a secret. So Emily meets a mysterious guy called Wynne, and the two feel a spark between them and slowly develop a relationship, and we find out some secrets about the town, and we find out a lot of secrets about the family as the story goes along. There are a few plot twists that I wasn't expecting, but it is kind of what you would expect from a YA novel in this genre. But Lindsay Kelk is a brilliant writer. I love her style of writing, and I find that she's done a really good job of moving over into the YA writing. So she really describes the setting so well, and the setting and the place kind of takes on magical properties itself as well. And I love the characters, I love the relationship between Emily and Wynne, and it is one of my favourite YA books in this genre. And yeah, I do have a couple of copies of it. So this one I think is the Waterstones version, and this has some beautiful edges. I also have the Lot Library edition, which has a green cover. I think I prefer the purple cover because purple is my favourite colour. But yeah, I love this so much, and I can't wait for the rest of the series to come out. So now I have a few standalones which are by the same author. So we have The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin, and this again was a 5-star read for me. I love this so much. Rachel Griffin is a brilliant writer. She did have a brain injury and concussion, and it's taken her a long time to recover from that. But she does have a new book coming out at the start of next year, which I'm really looking forward to. So we follow Clara, who after an accident wants nothing to do with her powers. But the witches are slowly losing their control over the elements, and they need her power as she is a very powerful witch. So we follow Clara as she makes a decision to use her powers, but is the cost of using her magic worth losing the person she loves most in the world? I loved how this one was kind of tied to environmental issues as well. So we do see the effect of climate change in this book. But there was just something about the writing. The way Rachel Griffin writes is very atmospheric. She brings the setting to life, and I love how she makes kind of the magical elements seem very normal in this world. So yeah, it's very much tied to magic and nature. So going back to the root of magic, and I really love that. Also, her writing is just very filled with emotion, and I also love the romance in this one as well. And again, it's a very beautiful edition. There's no sprayed edges, but the hard case is beautiful. Yeah. After reading this, I had to immediately pre-order Rachel Griffin's next novel, which was Wild is the Witch. Again, such a beautiful cover. The designer, whoever's designing these, has got it spot on. So Wild is the Witch is a standalone, so these are all standalones in different worlds. Again, we follow a witch who, in the past, something terrible happened with her magic, and she's vowed never to use her magic again. So Iris now hides who she is and vents her frustration by writing curses that she never intends to cast. She works on a wildlife reserve, and one day they get a new intern called Pike, and Iris detests him, and she writes a curse which she doesn't plan to cast. But she's just about to get rid of the curse when an owl swoops in and takes the paper with the curse on it and flies off with it. So Iris then has to go on a mission to recover this curse before it can be cast. And it just so happens that the owl is a powerful amplifier, so if the curse gets out, then it will affect more than just Pike. So she ends up having to team up with Pike to go and find this owl with this curse. Again, this book is very tied to nature. So she works in a nature reserve, there's lots of owls. But this, again, the writing is beautifully atmospheric. This one reads a little bit more YA than The Nature of Witches, but again, I just love this so much. I love Rachel Griffin's writing. Beautifully atmospheric, compelling plot, and I love the characters. Again, we have the beautiful casing on this book. So yeah, these are beautiful. That brings me to Rachel Griffin's third book, which is Bring Me Your Midnight. Again, beautiful casing. These are some of my favourite books in my collection. So we follow Tana, whose life has been planned since the moment she was born. She is bound to marry the governor's son Landon, which will bring an alliance between the witches on their island and the mainlanders, who don't like the existence of witches, but they have agreed to form an alliance. In this world, the witch clan release most of their magic into the ocean so as not to harm the mainlanders and keep within the terms of their alliance. But Tana misses the midnight ritual, and there is no one she can turn to until she meets Wolf, who claims to be from a coven that there is no knowledge about on the island. And rather than forcing Tana to expel her magic into the ocean, he teaches her how to use her magic and hone this. So again, very atmospheric, plot was good. Also love the characters and the romance in this, and kind of the mystery behind the witches and this other coven that they know nothing about. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to her next novel. So next up, I'm moving to the cozier witchy reads. So first up is The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. Again, this is a beautiful fairy edition. I love these bees on this edge. Yeah, and I just love this cozy cottagecore vibe cover. So this story follows Marigold, who prefers the company of the meadow spirits to people. Her grandmother asks her to come and visit on an island that she lives on and offers Marigold the chance to become the next Honey Witch. She agrees, but this newfound independence comes at a cost that no one can love her. Then Lottie, who is a grumpy skeptic and doesn't believe in magic, turns up at her doorstep. Marigold can't resist the chance to prove to Lottie that magic does exist and it is real. Marigold then begins to care for Lottie in ways that she never expected. The There is also some darker magic here which threatens to destroy her home, and then she must fight to prevent losing her home and the person she really cares for. So this book really has the cottagecore ambience. I loved the magic system and the heritage of the Honey Witch. I thought that was beautiful. Again, this was very much steeped in nature, bringing magic and nature together, so back to the original forms of magic. I thought that was great. I also love the fact the author has chosen to make this a sapphic romance, and I love the different characters of Marigold and Lottie and their different characteristics and how they slowly come closer and closer together. So next we have a book with like a found family vibe, and this is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Madana. This story follows Mika Moon, who is one of the only witches in Britain, and she has spent her life following 3 rules, and that is keep your head down, don't tell anyone about your magic, and stay away from other witches. But then she is asked to travel to a location called Nowhere House, where she is then tasked with training some young witches. Mika actually jumps at the chance to live a different life. So this is very much found family, it's got a very cozy vibe. Mika is a very relatable character. There is some romance as well. Yeah, if you want some cozy magic and romance, then I would recommend this. She does have another book, which I'm not sure if it's a sequel or if it's just another standalone, but I haven't read that yet. The next book is another cozy book that was on my September TBR that I've already read, and that's Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. I am really happy that I managed to read this. I got it last year and never got around to reading it, but I'm so happy that I have read it now. I went to an event with Lucy Jane Wood as her next novel, Uncharmed, was out the other day, and that is a standalone but set in the same world. So I'm really looking forward to reading that as well. So Rewitched follows Belladonna Blackthorne, who is a witch. She works in a bookshop, but she hasn't really got her life figured out yet. She does use her magic, but she hasn't really honed any of her magical skills. Shortly before her 30th birthday, she receives a letter from the kind of magical council. She's expected to complete a trial which proves her worthiness as a witch. The coven tell her that she has a month to fix her magic and hone her craft, or she'll risk losing her magic forever. And Belle needs all the help she can get in order to pass this test and retain her magic. She ends up with an unlikely mentor who helps her discover her magic. We also have a dash of romance in here, but this novel is really about kind of found family and finding yourself in the world and realising it's okay not to have everything figured out. There is some peril, but it is very low stakes, so still very much cozy. There are some great characters in here. Belladonna, or Belle herself, is a great character. I think it's also really good to have a main character who is in her 30s, because normally we get the like teenager or the early 20s and kind of miss out on characters in their 30s who are still trying to figure everything out. I also love Ariadne, who is her friend, and also the character of Rune. He does kind of grow on you throughout the book. But yeah, this edition is the one with the cat on the sprayed edges, so yeah, I love this. But it definitely lived up to my expectations, so definitely pick this one up. So next up I have a couple of romances. So we have the Ex Hex by Erin Stirling. So this one follows Vivian, who is a witch, and she has a big breakup and ends up cursing her ex after a mix of magic and vodka. And then 9 years later, her ex Reese returns to the town and a series of mishaps happens, and Viv realises that the curse that she cast is having all kind of untoward effects, and discovers that hexing her ex may not have been harmless, and she needs to find a way to reverse the curse before it's too late. So I wouldn't say this is anything spectacular in terms of the plot. But yeah, it's a nice cozy romance if you just looking for a good time. So next up is Best Hex Ever by Nadia El-Fassi, and we follow Dina, who is a skilled kitchen witch. She runs a bakery and puts magic into all of her bakes. But Dina is cursed, and anybody who starts to fall for her ends up having accidents and gets hurt. Scott is a museum creator who ends up coming back to London after a breakup, and he walks into the cafe one day, meeting Dina. And then by chance, both Dina and Scott are going back to the countryside for a wedding of a friend. It ends up being the same wedding that they're going to, and they slowly start to form a romantic relationship. Again, this was quite cozy. There is quite a bit of spice in it, so just keep that in mind if that's not kind of your thing. This is a very quick read, and I would recommend it for if you are looking for, yeah, just a fun time with some witches, some spice and romance. So the last section of this video is books that didn't really fit in the other categories, the kind of general adult witchy books, and also a couple of series in here. So first up is a book by one of my favourite authors, and that's Alice Hoffman, and this is The Invisible Hour. I read this last year and absolutely loved it and gave it 5 stars. I also managed to get the American edition of this when I went to New York, and yeah, I think I prefer this over the UK cover. The Invisible Hour was just beautiful. So The Invisible Hour follows Mia, whose mother Ivy became pregnant with her when she was young and ended up going to live in an oppressive cult and becoming involved with the leader of this cult. So Mia is kind of adopted by the cult leader, and it is a very oppressive life. It is very much a patriarchy. Mia has little agency. She's not allowed to do what she wants. She's rarely allowed to leave the community, and she is looking for a way out and a way to have freedom in life. One day Mia ends up going into the local town library, and she picks up a book called The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and she really resonates with this book. She knows then that she has to find a way out of the cult and live her life as a free woman. This novel was really unexpected. I'm not going to give too much away because there is this beautiful twist towards the later half of the book. But again, Alice Hoffman's writing is just beautiful. She is such a master at magical realism. She writes female characters so well, and these kind of stories that span generations. She's also very good at writing the more sensitive and emotional topics, and you really become invested in these characters and their lives, and she's just such an eloquent writer, and just everything she writes is beautiful. I love how she sprinkles these magical elements into these real world and real places. We always have fierce, strong-minded female characters who are looking to change their lives. If you're looking for a book that you get really invested in the world and the characters and the lives of the characters, then you definitely need to read this. Next is Wayward by Amelia Hart. This is set in various timelines, and we follow 3 different women. So we follow Kate in 2019, and she is looking to get out of an abusive relationship. Kate flees London and goes to a Cumbrian cottage which has been in her family. And then there's secrets lurking in this cottage and links to witch hunts of the 17th century. Then we follow Violet in 1942, who is more interested in nature and insects than following rules of society that are expected of young women. And a chain of events changes her life forever. Then we follow Alpha in 1619, who is accused of witchcraft. This weaves together the stories of 3 women across 5 centuries. It's really about female resilience and the power of nature. This was another 5-star read for me, and I love Amelia Hart's writing. This was very atmospheric. There's a lot of mystery as well. And we see Kate's determination to break out of her abusive relationship and discover secrets about her family. So yeah, it's very atmospheric, very beautiful writing. I love the interweaving of the stories, and I love the characters as well. I think Kate was probably my favourite character. I love how she gets her strength, and by uncovering secrets of her family in the past, she draws strength from that and empowers herself. There's also a lot of kind of twists and turns in this and things that you wouldn't expect. So it's also quite a lot of mystery. But yeah, definitely pick this one up. And Amelia Hart also has another novel called The Sirens, which I read this year. That's very good as well. But yeah, Amelia Hart is a brilliant writer. Again, another beautiful edition. So next I have another author who I love, which is Sarah Addison Allen, and these books are not in the same world, they're just standalones. But Garden Spells is one of my favourite books by this author. I love this so much. I read it a long time ago, but it's one of those that really stays with me and I keep coming back to. We follow the story of the Waverley women who live in North Carolina. The house has been in their family for generations. There is a wall garden that mysteriously blooms throughout the year. There's a lot of rumours about dangerous loves and tragic passions, and every Waverley woman is somehow touched by magic. So Claire has always nurtured her family roots and she's always tended the garden, and she has made delicacies from the produce that she has grown in the garden. One day a stranger ends up moving next door to her, and Claire finds that a vine of ivy from next door has gradually made its way into the Waverley's garden. Claire's life is about to run out of control. So this is so magical. The writing is beautiful. Sarah Addison Allen is a great author. Very similar to Alice Hoffman. I love the magical realism elements here. She does a great job at bringing the magic into the house and to the family and giving us this beautiful magic lore. There is romance in here, and I just love this book. It's definitely time for me to reread this, as it was a long time ago. But yeah, this is one that just stays in my head. I always think back to the time I was reading it and remember how amazing it was. So we also have The Peach Keeper, which again is set in North Carolina. It's not following the Waverley family, it's following a different family. So we follow 2 different female characters. So Willa Jackson, whose family owned a beautiful house on top of the ridge, but their legacy and this house has now fallen into ruin, and Willa wants to escape this legacy. And we also follow Paxton, who wants to break free from her parents' expectations and from unrequited love. Desperate for distraction, she decides to restore the empty mansion to its former glory. But there is a discovery of a long-buried secret and a friendship that defies time. A touch of magic will transform both women's lives in ways they never expected. I can't remember a lot about the plot of this one, but I remember it being very much like the reading experience for Garden Spells. Beautifully written. But yeah, I would definitely recommend that as well if you like Sarah Addison Allen books. Then the third book by Sarah Addison Allen is The Girl Who Chased the Moon. I read this a few years ago. This again has the same vibes. It's also set in North Carolina, where she set most of her books, I think. So Emily comes to this town in North Carolina and she's wanting to solve some of the riddles surrounding her mother's life, such as why did her mother leave her hometown so suddenly, and why did she vow never to return? So Emily will find the answers that she wants, but they're not what she expects. So this again is very magical. There is a lot of magic in the town. There is some romance and there's some great characters in here. I love the atmosphere and the setting, the writing. Sarah Addison Allen is really an author I would recommend if you love the magical realism. Also, if you are a fan of Alice Hoffman, I think they are very similar authors. So yeah, definitely pick this one up. So now I have a couple of Witchy series. The first one is Her Majesty's Royal Coven series, which is by Juno Dawson. This is a trilogy, but there is also a novella. So we have Her Majesty's Royal Coven, followed by The Shadow Cabinet, and then the final book in that series is Human Rights, which came out this year. And then there is also a novella set in the world, but which isn't part of the main trilogy, but this is Queen Bee. So Her Majesty's Royal Coven is a coven that works alongside the UK government to protect the nation from otherworldly magic and evil. The founding member of Her Majesty's Royal Coven was Anne Boleyn. So this follows the story of 4 childhood friends who are all witches with different powers. They all have a magical legacy within HMRC. So we follow them when they're older. So they've grown apart a bit. So we follow Helena, who is now head of HMRC, and there is a prophecy that a sullied child will come, and that sullied child will bring forth Leviathan and the end of the world. So Helena visits her friend Neve, who is not part of the coven anymore. She now works as a vet who deals with farm animals. But she is a very powerful witch, and Helena needs her powers to talk to this child that they are holding at the prison, as this child is expected to bring about the end of days. We also have Leonie, who has broken away from the coven. She felt underrepresented as a black witch in HMRC, so she has gone to join another coven. And we also have Elle, who isn't part of the coven anymore. She is now married with children. So this story is really about these childhood friends putting their differences aside, coming back together to deal with this very big threat to the witches of HMRC and also to the nation and to the world. But I loved this. I really loved the world that Juno Dawson has created, and the idea that is a section of the government that are specifically dealing with magical entities, and that they're witches, and also that Anne Boleyn was their founding member. So Queen Bee, the novella, goes back to Anne Boleyn, and we join the story after her beheading, and we look back upon the events that happened prior to her beheading and how HMRC was set up. So yeah, I feel this is a brilliant take on witches and the history behind the coven. So yeah, the second and third book obviously carry on from the first book, so I won't give any of that away for you. So now I've come to the final series of the video, and this has to be one of my all-time favourite book series. This is the Practical Magic series by Alice Hoffman, and we start with Magic Lessons, which goes right back to Hannah and Maria Owens, who start the Owens family, and that's the family that we see in the book Practical Magic. So this is set in the 1600s. Maria is abandoned in a snowy field in rural England, and under the care of Hannah Owens, Maria learns the nameless art, and Hannah sees that she has a great gift, so it teaches her everything she knows about witchcraft. Later on, Maria is betrayed by a man that she loves, and she then follows him to Salem, Massachusetts, and this is at the time where the witch trials were beginning. Then she invokes a curse which will haunt her family forever. So I think this one is probably actually my favourite book in the series, because it's showing the origins of the Owens family and the curse, and we're going right back to history and to the witch trials and to kind of the early perceptions of witches. And yeah, I really liked seeing the backstory and how Alice Hoffman has created this whole backstory for the characters that she wrote so long ago. And then we have the second book, which is The Rules of Magic, and this is now moved forward to the 1960s in New York. So we are following Franny, Jet and Vincent, who are descendants of Maria Owens, So Franny and Jet are the aunts from the Practical Magic book. So yeah, this is their kind of origin story. So we see about how they grow up and how they develop their magic, and also how the curse that Maria owns cast on the family, how that links to their story as well. And I think this was brilliant to get more of an insight into the aunts, because in Practical Magic, the book anyway, we don't really know a lot about their backstory and about how they came to live in that house and how they came to be witches. So this is a really great expansion of the universe. Yeah. So then we have the book that kind of started it all, which is Practical Magic. I think this is probably my least favourite out of the series, but it's still one of my favourite novels. Still has Alice Hoffman's signature style. It's just, I think I preferred more of the history and the backstory. And I think that Alice Hoffman has really honed her craft a lot more since she wrote Practical Magic. So her writing is just so much more beautiful. I mean, it's amazing here, but writing these books years later, she's obviously honed her craft and she's gone into a lot more detail. So this is following Gillian and Sally Owens, who are descendants of Maria Owens. Their aunts are Jet and Franny, and Sally has not embraced magic. She has been keen to distance herself due to the fact that there is this curse on the men that the Owens family meet. So Sally has lost her husband and she is bringing up her two daughters, and she ends up going back to live with her aunts. And then we also have Gillian, who's kind of like wayward, and she kind of embraces her magic, but she has also ended up in an abusive relationship, and she flees and escapes that and comes back to the aunt's house as well. So the family are kind of reunited in the house, and we see how the Owens family are seen in society, and then we see how the Owens sisters then are confronting the challenges of life and love. And I love the film version of this, but the film and the book are pretty different. So yeah, I think if you've seen the film, don't really go in with the expectations that the book is going to be exactly the same, as there are quite a lot of differences. And then we have the latest instalment and the final book in the Practical Magic series, and that is the Book of Magic. So there is the Practical Magic film 2 coming out, and I believe that it is based on this novel. So this book focuses on Sally Owens' daughters as they're growing up and they're discovering more about their heritage. We see kind of the aunts who are at the later stages of life and coming to terms with what that means for them and their magic. And we also see kind of the darker side of the magic. And it really is a true celebration of the whole of the Owens family and how they come together to break a curse. So they travel from Paris to London and to the countryside, and going back to where it all started with Maria Owens. So this is kind of the whole series come full circle, and it is a great conclusion to the series. And yeah, I loved it. So yeah, I was so happy to also manage to get the US editions of these books. So I have several editions of these books as they are my favourite. But yeah, Alice Hoffman is one of the best writers. I just love her style. I love how she brings the worlds and the characters to life. These characters are really rich and they have this rich history, and how she's kind of spanned this whole series across so many years and so many generations, and how it all fits together to give a bigger picture of the whole story of the Owens family. And her writing is just magical. So if you haven't already read these, I really recommend you pick these up if you like witchy books. As I said, these are some of my favourite books, so highly recommended. Right, so those are the final witchy book recommendations I have for you. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found some books that perhaps you hadn't heard of, awesome books that are intriguing to you. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'm aware this is probably going to be quite a long video, but yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.